Hello and welcome to episode 152 of the Podiatry Business Podcast with myself, Lorcan O Donaile. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to us on your favorite podcast streaming service, I am a podiatrist. I am a owner of a podiatry business coaching service, and I also own a podiatry marketing agency, Podiatry Patients on Tap. So you're in the right place if you're a podiatrist and you're listening, clinic owner, and you're listening to this. So in our last podcast, episode 151, what we talked about was why traditional marketing for podiatry clinics just doesn't really work, and why podiatry clinic owners are frustrated with spending money and time and effort on marketing and not really being sure if it's actually generating any patients. And I talked about the strategy that you should use to, instead of that, to actually overcome those concerns. And that you need to begin really with strategy. And the beginning of strategy is figuring out your marketing triad. Who is your ideal patient? What's the message that you're going to be using to resonate with them? And then lastly, where will you find them? What media? Instead of saying, I'm going to do Facebook ads or Google ads, that is the last thing you come to. And how you should be using information marketing and direct response marketing together to build trust with patients, build trust with leads who aren't ready to book in, who aren't ready to say yes straight away, and start to build a database of leads and patients that allows you to scale your business, scale your marketing, knowing the results in terms of spend in and income out with accuracy. So that was last podcast. If you haven't listened to it, I definitely recommend you go back and do so. So today's podcast, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how you actually implement that. So the title of this is Podiatry Marketing Implementation Blueprint. So I think about clinic owners that have come to me and have been in that position, and they come and we teach them the strategy, and then we start to do their marketing for them. And typically what we're seeing with clinic owners is that they're doubling their profits inside 12 months using these systems. So it is effective. We've done it across the world: USA, New Zealand, Australia, Ireland obviously, and the UK. So I would love for that sort of thing to happen to you and to your clinic if you're listening to this today. So let's begin with creating your marketing system, or you may even say your anti-traditional marketing system. So what we want to do first is we have our strategy, okay? And we understand what we're trying to do is we're trying to use information marketing, lead magnets. But what we want is we want patient attraction funnels. So essentially these are systems that we are able to attract people who are not a patient, a lead. And a lead is somebody who's given you permission to have a conversation with them about their problem. So we've got a top of a funnel that we're attracting people in, okay? And we're following up with them in an automated way. And then down the bottom of the funnel, they're becoming patients. That's why we call it a marketing funnel. Now, the reason that I call it Podiatry Patients on Tap, and the reason that I've written the book and call it Podiatry Patients on Tap, is because you can get the book on Amazon if you want, or you can have a free copy, digital copy off our website, which is podiatrypatientsontap.com. Now, the reason I've called it that is because you literally can turn this up and down, turn it off and on as you need to, like a tap. And when I first heard this concept, I thought that was ridiculous, but it is like that, okay? So what we want to do is we want to set this up in a way that is automated as we possibly can. So we want to set up automated lead generation, and the backbone of this is online. So we're going to use online marketing, online paid ads, even online SEO, organic. But once we set it up, it kind of works for us continually. So it's fairly automated. So you don't have to continually go in and do something every single week. Now in our service, we do it for our clients. So that's slightly different, but you get the concept. And what we're doing is we're setting up multiple entry points for different patient types. So what do I mean by that? So we will use Google, we will use Facebook, we will use Instagram, we might even use TikTok, we might even use LinkedIn, etc., SEO, Google My Business, and so on. So there's multiple entry points into the one funnel, and depending on the type of patient, we will subdivide that. So for example, if I was to look at my Google ads, in my own personal Google ads in my own clinic, I will have a plantar fascia campaign. I will have a foot pain campaign. I'll have a ingrown toenail campaign. And each of these campaigns go into the same concept funnel, but the follow-up is individual, certainly at the start, to each condition. So it will mention the condition that they have entered or are interested in. There's no point in talking to someone about their ingrown toenail if they've typed plantar fasciitis into Google. So we've got multiple entry points for these patients, or these leads that are going to become patients, into our funnel. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a content creation framework where essentially what we have is we're going to create something once and we're going to use many times. So an example would be we will build a lead magnet, which might be a useful video on plantar fasciitis. We're going to do that once, and then we're going to use it over and over and over again with multiple patients for many years to come. So as of today is 2025, I would have come across this concept in 2016. I would have written emails in 2016 that are still working right now as you're listening to this podcast. I have not had to change them in 9 years. And this is what I mean by creating once and use many times principle. And remember what I talked about in the last podcast, is that you want to make sure the content you're giving is the best you can possibly give so that it builds trust in you and in your clinic that you're the right place. Now, if you're wondering, how do I know that this is good enough? Well, almost give it all away for free would be the way I would suggest it. As I'm doing here, I'm telling you exactly what to do. I'm not holding anything back. And you want to be giving the content for free to your patients that typically they'll come in and pay you for. Because it's not that the information is the problem. Because with the internet now, with Google, with ChatGPT, people can get the information for free anyway. They're going to get it. But what they can't do is implement it. And what they're going to pay you for and your team for is they're going to pay you for the expertise in implementing this. Okay, and that's really important that you get that. And what you want to have is you want to have a structure, a calendar structure to this content, so that when you're SEO, for example, that you're continually doing this on an ongoing basis. So what we do as part of our service for our marketing clients is we will give out every single week good quality information that we write for them, and we do it every single week, and we have a follow-up process. We call it the weekly client machine. So we will have that go out 5 days a week for that particular information that we brought out on, say, on a Monday. Now, what you want to do is when you're trying to do this is you want to try and make sure that you're creating this content in batches so that you're not having to work in the evening or the weekends or every single week sit down and do it together. So obviously you can outsource it to a clinic like us where we have our SEO service. But you can also try to do this yourself. So you can get staff involved, or you can use AI if you wish to do so, if you know what you're doing. But you want to try and batch the creation of this content, because if you have to do it every single week, what will happen is that'll be fine for a while, and then after a while you'll find that something else will get in the way and you won't get that done. Now, if we look at follow-up sequences, what you want to try and do is you want to try and map out that patient journey from the time they become a lead to the time they become a patient. So what I mean by that is, if somebody becomes a lead, what we will do for our client is we will have a text go out to that person, followed by an email, followed by texts and emails over a series of 30 days. Then we have a 60-day, and we might even have a 90-day. And in fact, in our case, for our clients, we continue to follow up with that lead forever until such time as they either unsubscribe, or maybe if they come in for a patient, they become slightly different. They go to a different sequence. But you'll map out in advance the patient journey, how often you want to contact them, how do you want to contact them, is it going to be through email, phone, etc., so that that's all planned out before you start to drop leads into your funnel. Now, the best way to do this is to have an automated nurture sequence. And that's not that difficult nowadays with on our software and services or software systems. So the more automated it is, the easier it is, because like I said, you're creating it once and you're using it many times. Also, what you should consider is reactivating campaigns or reactivation campaigns where you have your database of patients. So somebody will come in, they'll enter your top of your funnel, they'll become a patient. And then what you do is you don't just stop contacting them, they will then go into a different campaign and reactivate campaigns. So this is something I've been doing in my own clinic for years. It's something we do for our clients. And typically, top of mind, I can think of one particular SMS campaign that we've used in my own clinic and where we've seen 14 times return on investment. It's fantastic. Reactivate your own database, because these are people who already know you, they like you, and they trust you. Then much easier to get them to come back and say yes. Now, converting, and this is, I think, part of the system or the whole process that can make people a little bit uncomfortable, especially the admin team, that they feel that they have to be salesy. So that's not what you want. What you do not want to be is salesy or pushy. You want to continually be offering information and be useful to that person. If you're being salesy, or you feel you're trying that's the process, that's not really going to work. Now, what we do is we use in our system for clients, we use AI to have the conversation. So AI will have the conversation through text and voices coming, etc. And then we're trying to get that. We train the AI bots to speak like we would and to triage that patient. And then ideally what they're doing is they're getting that patient to book online. That would be the perfect outcome, because then no human needs to be involved and it can work 24/7 even while you're closed. So that's our follow-up sequences that we're talking about. Now, so we've figured out our system, and we have this working where we have our strategy. We're attracting leads from multiple points, multiple areas, multiple types of patients or leads, condition specific, etc. And then we're putting them into our funnel. We have an automated sequence that's following up to get them to build up trust with us, and then when they're ready to book that appointment, and we're encouraging them to do so by offering them the ability to do so online, and we're getting AI to have that conversation so that we don't feel like we're being salesy, because that's not what we want to do. We want to help people. So you've done all that. Now what you need to do is you need to measure the results of this. So you need to make sure that you have your key performance indicators for this. Now, I am going to do a separate podcast next week on this and the 3 numbers that you really need to know when it comes to this. But it isn't just, very quickly I'll go over. What we don't want is vanity metrics. So what I mean by that is, what I insist is that clicks, cost per click, impressions, all that kind of stuff, I don't care. I'm not interested in that, and I'm advising you not to be too concerned over that sort of stuff. What really matters is that you're able to see how much did I spend on that campaign and how much did I make. And now how much you spend is easy to figure out, easy. But how much did I make? The only way you'll know that is if you know the name, the email, and the phone number of every single person who entered that campaign. And then you're able to measure out at the other end what actually did they spend. That's it. It's as simple as that, in theory, except it can take a bit of work if you haven't automated it, if you haven't got a software system that can measure all of that, as we do for our clients. We're not interested in clicks, we're not interested in impressions, we're not interested in likes. That is not going to pay the bills. But like I said, KPIs, measuring your ROI is hugely important. And what we'll do is we will go through that in a little bit more detail on our next one. But there's a few things that you need to make sure that you're considering almost before you begin your marketing campaign. And that first one would be the lifetime value of your patient for each campaign. So if you run an ad, for example, and the ad is for a plantar fasciitis patient, and you know that a plantar fasciitis patient is going to pay you maybe twice as much as, say, an ingrown toenail patient, well, then you'll be able to figure out how much you're willing to spend to buy a lead that is going to become a plantar fasciitis patient. So you want to know what your lifetime value is. So people say to me, how do I figure out the lifetime value of a patient? It's not that hard. What you want is you want your average transaction value multiplied by the average number of appointments that that patient has over a period of time. Now, typically, I would say use a 2-year period. So if you're looking at today, go back over the previous 2 years and look at how many times the people come in over 2 years, how much they spend per appointment. Multiply one by the other, and that's your patient lifetime value. And you can be specific for particular conditions, and then you'll know which conditions you want to track, which you want to or attract rather. You also need to make sure that you're tracking your ROI on your marketing, because if you're not tracking your ROI, then really you don't know what's working, whether it was worth doing or not. And we would ask our clients to present their ROIs to us monthly, or at least quarterly, so that we can make judgments on what ads are working, what ads are worth keeping, what ads are worth turning up, and so on. You probably want to be considering what's the cost per acquisition target that you have for a client. So if you have a client and that value of that patient, if they become a patient, is $1,000, and the profit margin is 30%, then you know your profit margin is 300. You're not likely to spend more than X. You might not say, for example, you might say, I'm not going to spend $500 attracting that client, because by the time I've made my payments and so on, I'm actually losing money. So you need to kind of have an idea on our cost per acquisition targets, and we do talk about that in our training. And again, that comes down to knowing your profit margins versus your revenue. And you need to know that on a monthly basis. You need to have your numbers, and unfortunately, a lot of clinic owners don't do that. So what we have at this point now is we have our system, we know what we're trying to do, okay, and we know what numbers we're trying to track. How do you actually build all this, and how do you make it happen? And it can seem overwhelming because there's a lot to do, okay? Now, obviously, if you come to an agency like us, a podiatry marketing agency like us, we just do it all for you, and it makes it a lot easier. But what you need really is you need an implementation timeline. So you want to figure out what are the top priorities that you have in the first 30 days. And then you want to have and that has a lot of detail in it, the first 30 days. Then you have a 90-day implementation plan. Now, the 90 days can be more bullet point, but each 30 days, following 30 days, has a lot more detail. It has who's going to be doing it, whose responsibility is to do each task, and so on. A common roadblocks that we see is that lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge can be overcome with paying somebody who has the knowledge to help you do it, or studying it yourself. Like I said, listening to podcasts like ours, reading Podiatry Patients on Tap, the book, and so on. And you need to make sure you allocate sufficient resources, and resources means time and actually equipment, software, etc., etc. Now, what's also important is that you get buy-in from your team. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see with this system and introducing marketing into your business that's going to provide you with growth is the team don't buy in. And they don't buy in because they've seen it before. They've seen the owner come along, have these ideas previously, and then the owner doesn't really follow up on it, or doesn't keep it up, and they abdicate it. So we have clients in the past who've come along, they have just abdicated rather than delegated the system to team members. They've never really checked in to see what the team members are doing, and as a result, they don't get anywhere near the results that they could do. So you have to make sure that you get your staff engaged. You have to make sure that you give them the training requirements that they need so that they know what's going on and how to work it. You have to make sure that you delegate strategies, okay, rather than abdicate the strategies, and you've got to make sure that you're keeping them accountable. You're creating accountability for the system being set up initially and then being run long term. Now, like I said, if you're working with a marketing agency, it means you can outsource a lot of this, but even then you need to make sure that you're not abdicating everything, that you're in charge of the strategy, and that you're getting that reporting. You're getting the numbers from the agency that matters. And the numbers that matter are: how many actual leads did I get? Can you show me their name? Can you show me their email? Can you show me their phone number? And how many of them actually became patients? And how do I know that? And how much did they spend? And if you're not getting that from your marketing spend right now, well, then you could, and you more than likely are, because we've seen this repeatedly, are wasting an awful lot of money on your marketing. So some action steps I would tell you is to sit down and think, who actually do I want to attract? And then where am I going to find them? And then you want to plan out your patient journey, okay? And you want to, how are you going to follow up with them, and how are you going to close those patients? Then you need to build out your 30-day implementation plan for to get this started, and then your 90-day broader implementation plan. You need to get your staff engaged, and you need to make sure that you're delegating these and you're holding them accountable. And when I think of clients of mine, I think of one particular person who came to us and was spending $4,000 a month on Google Ads, which was an awful lot of their money. And currently they're spending 2,000. And when they came to us, they were on their own, one person. And they, at this point, are now spending 2,000 a month. This is like 2.5 years later. Spending half as much. They now have a second clinic and they have staff in both clinics. And their turnover has increased 6-fold. So I'm recording this in January, and they have turned over 6 times more in January than they did in July when they first came to see us. And the reason for it was, one of the main reasons for it, obviously, implementing good business strategies. But one of the main reasons for it is they understood why marketing was going to be so important, and that the current marketing system they were using just wasn't working. It was just wasting money. So remember, implementation is what's going to make the difference for you, not just knowledge, because this is what's going to create results. You can't just read the book or go on the course. You have to actually implement these things. But if you want help, if you want us to implement it for you, if you're a podiatry clinic owner and you're interested in having a conversation with us to see if we think we can help you, then what you need to do is you need to go to podiatrypatientsontap.com, book a triage call. It's just a 10-minute phone call with one of my team. We'll have a quick chat to see if we think we can help, and if we think we can help, we will take the conversation from there. It's not a sales call. We don't do sales calls, and in fact we probably turn down, I'd say, 50% of people who approach us and ask us to help, because if we are not the right fit for them, we don't want to be taking those people on. It's not fair on them. So until next time, and remember, the next time we're going to go through what KPIs you absolutely need to know for your marketing. Until next time, this is Lorcan O Donaile, podiatrist and podiatry business mentor, signing out.